Hi, I'm Jim Connaughton, President and CEO of Nautilus Data Technologies, and it is my great pleasure today to be having a conversation with three of the globe's leading business people, and more importantly, three of the globe's leading sustainability champions. So I'd like to introduce you first to my immediate left, Oscar Munoz, the chairman of United Airlines. Beside him is Cathy Engelbert, the CEO of Deloitte US. And then the BRT, the Business Roundtable's leader of sustainability, Mark Sutton, who's the chairman and CEO of International Paper. Great pleasure to be here with all of you today. And I want to start with you, Mark, as the chairman of the Business Roundtable's Embracing Sustainability Challenge. Why don't you kick things off to tell us why the Business Roundtable is involved in this, why it's important, and what it means to you?
Thank you, Jim. And it's pretty natural. I mean, business leaders have something to say about sustainability. It's in our business models, it's in our best interests. So one of the things we did as part of our Energy and Environment Committee was, and I started it and then we passed on the challenge, Oscar's involved and several other CEOs, we challenged each other to tell our sustainability story in a series of short videos that are posted on the internet, posted on the BRT site. We've got almost 100 CEOs telling their story. It's really caught on like wildfire. Over 30 million people have viewed these videos. And it's really trying to get at the four areas that we really think are important, and that's recycling, reuse, and reducing the consumption of input materials. It's about reducing greenhouse gases. It's about looking at the next generation of renewable energy. And all of those things really help business tell its story about what we're doing in our business model, and it can be consistent with a sustainable outlook for the environment, for talent, and everything else that keeps our companies going for the future. So it's actually an exciting effort for us and probably took off a little bit better than we expected it to, and we're having some fun with it as well. That's
great. So Cathy, give us some context. So in 1970, we had Earth Day. Then in 1990, we had the Rio Summit on Sustainable Development, the first international summit. Dial forward 20 more years, you have the International Summit on Sustainable Development in Johannesburg. And here we are almost 20 years later. You advise businesses around the globe, give us a look back, but then give us a look forward.
Yeah, and maybe the look forward is what's changed. Well, one of the things we're seeing with a 75% millennial population and within Deloitte is the rise of employee activism around issues like corporate social responsibility, and certainly sustainability fits right in there. So for instance, I got an email from one of our professionals who knew how many plastic straws and plastic bottles and everything we're using. I'm like, where did they get that data? I didn't even have that data at my fingertips. So the use of data now to determine how to reduce waste and all the things Mark just talked about around reducing costs, which is all part of this as well, and business leaders are motivated by that. But it really is this purpose over profits. I think most of the S&P 500 now are reporting out on climate type ESGs, and as you look at what ESGs, the environmentally sustainable goals, and so I think one of the things is what's changed is stakeholders are demanding it, and a lot of times those stakeholders are your own employees.
Interesting. So Oscar, you just announced a whopping goal and are taking some additional initiatives in technology and innovation. Tell us what that's about, so I'll let you tell us, but then very specifically, let's start to move the conversation then to sustainable development in practice.
Gotcha. Well, I can do both at the same time. Our goal is to reduce our carbon emissions by 50% by the year 2050. That's meaningful because in my world, I burn 4 billion gallons of jet fuel a year. That's the equivalent of 1 day's production in the world stage. So it's a massive amount of consumption. And so how do we reduce that? Renewable energy is clearly a source. All of the reasons that you've outlined with regards to the economic aspect of it, with the social consciousness, your employees, your customers, all of those are merits. But most importantly, as CEOs, and the BRT challenge was awesome, Mark, because it was fun to do, but it also compelled us to sort of challenge each other. My thing is the same way. We're the first airline to do this in the world. We've taken great positions, financial positions in some of these companies that do these sorts of things. And importantly, it's one of those things that if you believe in an issue, can you do something about it is a question you ask yourself. And if you can, the most important question is, will you do something about it? And for us, putting that goal out there for ourselves is going to compel and lead others to do the same thing. And that's kind of the driving mission for our work.
Well, let me tease that one out a little bit then. So first in the sector. Your sector is close. You all talk to each other. How does that ripple through?
Well, it takes time for people to appreciate our leading ways. It is a competitive world, though, and it is a challenge, and that's what the challenge was about at BRT. In a fun way, why don't we challenge each other to do something for this planet and for our communities that also, for us, economically makes sense? For me, fuel is one of my biggest expenses. It's a very, very volatile expense. Something like renewable fuels and rather than fossil fuels really provide a more static cost structure for me. So it's a good business area as well.
Well, so let's move then. You talked about renewable fuels. Let's move to technology itself and technology innovation. I've surveyed all your materials. Why don't you highlight a few things that are happening now, the reality of technology innovation now, but then, and maybe I'll start with you, Oscar, and then go to Mark, but then also what you're most excited about coming down the pike. So why don't you give us an example or two?
Wow, that's good. Spend a lot of time, and I don't want to take our time from our folks. I have a saying that's proof, not promise. So this concept of our sustainable efforts in 2050 started already. Every one of our aircraft that are flying out of LAX have a blend of a mix of renewable fuels in there today. Today we are already doing this, and we do more if we could scale it and the economies were well. A. B, we're at a function for the BRT here in DC. Downstairs there's 3 simple, practical, technical innovations that make you, the customer, less stressful about the work you do. We provide you a better service, and we make sure the product around you is safe and reliable. And these are simple applications that we've developed with our own internal team to really provide a more relevant innovation that services our customers today, not necessarily building for the future, which we're doing as well, but it's important for me that you, the customer, get us today in that space rather than wait 3 or 4 years for some development.
So Mark, you're literally on the ground. All over.
All over.
Give us a sense of, again, what's happening today and what you're most excited about.
I think there's 2 things in our industry space that's happening today, and that one is forest sustainability and better managing forests that were planted for the purpose of harvesting for wood products and the kind of products we make. So increasing the yield, protecting the wildlife, and reducing the environmental impact of the act of forestry practices. And there's a lot of cutting-edge techniques that have been developed. And much of this land in the U.S. is privately owned, so you have a lot of different people you have to educate, let them understand why it's important to really protect this natural resource. Inside of our factories, for us, it's really about the progress we've made in energy. We generate most of our own energy from carbon-neutral biomass. The part of the wood that we don't use to make our products has tremendous fuel value. And so by applying simple technology, internet-based technology in our process and lean manufacturing techniques, we take the variability out of our operation, more of it, not all of it, more of it, which allows us to generate more of our own energy, which puts a different profile on our footprint of energy generation, energy consumption, and less of a burden on the fossil fuel grid that's out there.
Interesting. So you mentioned digital tools. So Cathy, maybe I'll ask you because you're seeing the landscape. A lot of buzzwords out there. Big data, machine learning, artificial intelligence, robotics is even a buzzword. What's happening with digitalization and not just software, but what's happening with the physical the hardware of digitalization and how that's working its way into enhancing sustainability?
Yeah, well, first we're obviously seeing urban evolution. And when you see urban evolution, you think smart cities, smart nations, sensors everywhere. So that's going to determine energy usage, water, clean water, healthcare, access to public transportation, all of these things that these smart cities are going to be built around, and the future of mobility and transportation. So that's one trend we're obviously seeing. But we're also seeing the ability for this sensor and this Internet of Things and this what I call pervasive digital intelligence, which is enabled by, the Internet enabled essentially cloud. Cloud plus quantum computing plus data is enabling AI and cognitive. Now it's AI and cognitive plus edge computing and other things are essentially going to enable this pervasive digital intelligence that we're living in. So as you think about that, there's a big sustainability positive that could come out of, again, these smart cities, smart nations that are being built today. For instance, you go over to Spain, and there's an entire city called Santander that is really moving the needle on First of all, their citizens are becoming citizen data scientists. They're providing the data to government to run how their energy usage is and monitor watering their lawns and all these things. So it's really becoming something that it has a big sustainability element. And a lot of people don't focus on that as part of this. And every company, you heard these two gentlemen talking about how it's impacting their world and technology, but every company is impacted in some way, whether you're in fresh food, whether you're looking at what Oscar's looking at, not a linear supply chain anymore, but a much broader supply network. And I know you guys are doing some interesting things around the supply network, around predictive analytics on maintenance and things like that are going to change the game.
Okay, so you've highlighted the tools. Maybe I'll come back to you, Oscar. I mean, obviously, with all of this, there's a big human dimension, and it's tools to make humans, all of us, find better pathways. And then also has some potential downsides too. And we tend to talk a lot about the downsides, but Oscar, you told me a great story recently about just the simple application of these basic tools to really make work better for your people, but then also produce a really good outcome for the company.
Yeah, we can overcomplicate things, and Cathy just went through all of the different technologies and all the terminology that we use. I run a very simple business, but it requires a lot of people, not only coordinated and thoughtful, but really motivated to do the right thing. And it's so hard for them to do their work sometimes. And so how do we make their work simpler, for instance, is an objective of ours. And we can go into predictive analytics and all those things, but we can build that in the background. What is sent to the actual frontline folks is a really simple concept. We detach them from desktops and make them mobile, which we talked about before. And then we build a product that they design, they can maneuver around it. They don't have to know what the guts are behind it. They just know they can push a button and things happen. And then fundamentally, you do something that just attracts them as individuals. And I was at one of our hangars in San Francisco on one of our night shifts, and I asked one person, big technical operations guy, big maintenance guy that does all of these things. And I said, so what do you like best about that? He looks at me, looks at the iPad, drops it on the ground, bends over, picks it up, and he goes, "It don't break." which is a perfect example. So all he has to know is that it's usable, it's practical, and it's going to fall in my world. And so if that doesn't break, I love it. And the engagement that we've gotten from the folks, so it's not displacing people, it's making people more efficient, but it's a win-win for everyone. And we talk about purpose over profits. I like to say we're going to be profitable and principled, and this goes around to that principled side.
Interesting.
Your millennials will love you.
So Mark, you have to have an example or two like that.
So we have several inside the manufacturing arena similar to Oscar's, where we've given our team mobile tools, which really helps their job be more effective but also safer. We've also used it in the commercial side, where our sales and marketing people have mobile tools now where they can have at their fingertips what they need before they call on an account or before they troubleshoot a problem in a packaging plant somewhere. And so that's an innovation that gets at not the environmental sustainability, but how do you address the changing workforce needs? How do you address the sustainability of talent development in your company and give people the power of some of these tools to actually do a better job? Because I think Oscar's right. I mean, it's people, profit, and planet. They all three have to work together. And our employees, when they understand the purpose of their company, they can be our biggest advocates, especially when you have an actual story to tell, which many of our businesses undersell what we do, how we do it, and the good that we do in just doing our business. And all the way down the value chain, we make products out of natural resources. Our product, a box, the pulp inside of a baby diaper, all of those things end up helping our customers' overall sustainability index and story. And that's what our employees really get excited about. Some of these technology tools help them to really have the information they need at their fingertips when they're doing their job.
Well, so help us understand then, Cathy, so you talked about the millennials and how they have a strong interest. We're hearing about how you then empower the new workforce and partners, but how are you seeing in terms of the pervasiveness of the ethic, if you will, of sustainability, and then its relationship, and I'll come back to the two of you in a second, its then relationship to financial performance?
Yeah, so there's no doubt that as business leaders, we're watched every day by our people like never before, I believe. I believe that's a shift in the last 5 to 10 years, where they watch everything you say, whether you're in media, whether you're in employee town halls.
You have no idea.
And they're looking for leadership. We're in a divisive political environment, both here in the US, around the world. We've got populism. We've got a lot of things that as business leaders we're dealing with. We're walking on business eggshells every day, I believe. And I think what's important is, and our people are worried about, what does the future of work look like to them? What will these tools and technologies do for them? And yet they want the sustainable company, the company that's investing in sustainable business practices and that is reporting accurately and faithfully around those practices. Because I think everybody now is reporting something as it relates to their purpose, very purpose-driven around, again, not just sustainability or environment and climate, around, doing good, companies doing good. And there's some fabulous stories amongst the Business Roundtable member companies around this. And the question is, what is the next phase? What is the next step of how you get people motivated, you make the complex simple, because I thought that's a great point that Oscar made. It's a complex environment right now, and this, again, activism that we're seeing in a big way, where our employees want to tell us how to manage, that wasn't happening 10 years ago. And everyone being a data scientist wasn't happening 10 years ago. Everyone having access. So these are all interwoven, I think, in the story that as business leaders we need to tell around the next generation of what sustainability means to all of us.
Okay, well then, so let me take that and weave it in. So we're going to put two pieces to the answer for Mark and Oscar, because we talk about the contribution of sustainability in a sensible way to financial performance. To do that, you need innovation. And so I'm curious about the buy-in of the workforce, the engineers, the partners, the managers, to aligning innovation with financial performance with sustainable outcomes. So where do you see innovation internally first, and then where are you finding innovation externally that you can employ, better, faster, cheaper?
I think internally for us, since we're a process industry that takes natural resources and adds value at various stages, a lot of our internal innovation is what I mentioned earlier in how we refine our process. Some of the external innovation comes from what our customers need. So in many cases, think about the whole e-commerce segment. What they need is velocity through their supply chain, but they also need to lower their impact. So lighter, high-performance packaging, we will design and offer before they even ask for it, because we know that that's something they've got to address, and that's what the public wants. So our external tends to be pull from the customer with product. Internal is about our internal manufacturing processes. There's a lot of chemistry and a lot of science to the way we manage our fibers as we take recovered fiber and trees and make products out of it. And so some of what we're learning from other companies, we learned a lot from the airline industry, because they obviously have to have perfect maintenance. The consequences are too serious. It's serious for us, but we don't have the same burning platform with our technicians about an airplane engine, but the same techniques of innovation that they used to know exactly the condition of everything and to be able to predict it and deal with it, we're taking into our most critical unit operations, and the technology is available now that you can do it cost effectively. And some of our employees, even those that have been with us a long time and may be saying, I don't want to learn all this, they're so excited to be able to do something in their last 5 years of their career that they never got to do before. They just got to fix it before. Now they can prevent it. So we're seeing a lot of take-up on being smarter and using technological innovation to just make our business better. And when we talk about sustainability, we talk about not just the environmental component, but that we want to be around. We're 120 years old today. We'd like to be 240 years old tomorrow, but you have got to find ways to change what the customer needs, the communities that you're doing business in. And for us, we're a people business. You have to attract talent. Talent doesn't want to work for companies, as Cathy said, that don't really understand their role. And it's not just the young employees. I don't think they're going to let it go, but it's pervasive, at least in our view. And so for us, it's really about sustaining our company and everything that we do.
So I loved your phrase. So basically, everybody's a fiber scientist.
Yeah.
And I guess also a fiber ecologist.
That's right. That's right.
Oscar, aviation
say that.
scientists, aviation ecologists,
Oh my
like
God.
EcoSkies.
Well, I have the wonderful added benefit of 150 million people that fly us every year. They are all experts in everything that we do.
Me included.
Yeah, well, it's the nature of the beast, and it's hard to say anything more than our esteemed guests have said, but I think fundamental to everything that you heard from everyone, first of all, you have to really gain the trust of your employees and your customers. And in my business, that is one of the most critical things. And over time, we have gained it and lost it and gained it and lost it. So the reason you gain that trust is because you can actually ask them questions. And I always say sharing is caring. And I don't care how angry you are as a customer towards me, as long as you're telling me something, I still have you. It's the person that shuts down or quits flying me. So you have to listen before you apply any of this stuff. You have to know your environment, your customers, your people, and your needs. And then you put, so that's the internal mechanism. The external, then you find people to help you solve the issues that are very much what they want. My maintenance guy example, right? We built that because we said the simple, brilliant thing. We asked them.
Yeah.
And they said, this is what we'd like. And my team goes, well, that's easy. It's like, build it. And then from that portal, you get to build all sorts of things. So now the predictive maintenance and all those things that we're using outside sources to do, they're being welcomed with open arms. The dynamic of humans is that we only do what we trust, and we only trust what we know benefits us. And the purpose aspect, my team, our shared purpose is uniting the world and connecting people and uniting the world. And that's a metaphysical, visceral, sort of emotional feeling. It's not where you just fly people from the plane. They really want to connect people to special purposes. And when you get them focused on that, you listen to them, you can build all this great technology, and they use it, which is what I think the benefit that we're seeing at United.
And if I could play off one thing Oscar said at the beginning of that, which was brand risk. You only need one event to break the brand or to take a brand hit. And you constantly have to be thinking about managing that brand risk, and whether that comes from an employee, a customer, an issue that you have in your supply chain, whatever it is. So this brand risk, this conduct risk, this culture risk, this culture risk thing is now on the agenda of every board of directors that I talk with. And that's a shift. That's been a shift over the last couple years, I think. And that's, again, interrelated to everything we're talking about. But when you said the brand is what we all stand for. It's what we all work for. It's what our people all, follow our lead and our vision for. And that's an important element of this.
Well, so let me tease that out a little bit then, which is, for a long time through the arc of my career, it was always about environmental and safety compliance. I'm hearing from this conversation, which is it's about environmental safety, community performance, which is a very different way. You're managing to something different. Could you give some reflections on that? Because you've been living in these sectors for some time now, and we've come a pretty interesting arc. But what does it mean to move beyond sort of a compliance and enforcement mindset into a performance mindset?
And it's innovation. It's not just
Exactly.
performance, it's innovation.
Yeah.
And innovation is going to underpin it and drive it. And all of our employees want to feel entrepreneurial. So that's where the innovation of how they can help based on the vision set forth by the
I'll give you a simple example about the difference between compliance and really what can we do. When we set our Sustainability 2020 goals several years ago, probably rounded about 2010, so with a 10-year outlook, on a number of metrics, environmental metrics, social metrics, health and safety metrics, we largely set that from the top of the company. And obviously the law and compliance played a big role, and also what we thought we could do and afford. We're getting ready, and we're going to meet all of those, and some we've already met, and we're getting ready to launch our next generation sustainability goals for, let's say, 2030. And instead of setting them from the top, we've created verticals in the company all the way down to brand new employees that we just recruited and hired. And so International Paper's future sustainability look is going to be not just what we have to do, or not just what we know we can do, but what does the organization want to shoot for? And can we be profitable and successful and that company? And so our employees never dreamed that they'd be asked to participate in something if they're 5 years in to the company at that level. And then we're going to do what Oscar did. We're going to put it out there publicly, and we're going to hold ourselves to it, just like we did with the 2020s. The 2020 goals weren't easy, but they were much more a select group, typical from the top, and now this is going to be the entire organization.
Crowdsourcing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's a big difference there, because you're not going to just get compliance when you really ask your employees, what kind of company do you want to be?
So where do you go shopping for innovation? I've heard a lot of what happens internally, but how do you find the external technologies, systems, thinking? How do you find it? Ready to look for it? I'm a startup guy, so tell me about startups.
It is, the startup world is a beautiful place. There's so much energy and excitement and passion. And the way we do it is we expose ourselves to it. I'll take my leadership team and we'll go to Silicon Valley and we'll take meetings, right? That's one way of doing it. I was just in Singapore talking with a bunch of developers. Tel Aviv is a thriving new tech center. Denver, so you go to all these places, you meet, you talk, you listen to folks. You ask them to review your business and what they might need, and the things they bring you are unbelievable. And what can scale is amazing. And so you shop, you listen, and you put yourself out there and really, and then inside the company, it's fast failure. Hey, that sounds good, let's try it. It didn't work, okay, we'll put another thing. And that's hard to do for a 100-year-old company like mine.
Yeah, and I would just add, this ecosystem is absolutely amazing, and companies have totally figured out no one company can do this alone. You've got to make your choices about who you partner with, who you do your alliances with, but everybody's a piece of this puzzle, and it's all about platforms. If you don't have a platform, technology, people platform, you're not going to survive.
I would say similar for us. Our supply chain partners, including our customers, are the source of a lot of our innovation. And sometimes it's the smallest supplier or the smallest customer. And because we're in an industry space of forest products, we don't get to see everything. So we use companies like Cathy's that see every industry to help us, show us what's out there, what are other people doing. And then I think Oscar's example of just taking your leadership team out and living a day in that entrepreneurial environment can pay really big dividends.
Well, so then as we wrap up, you've all done amazing things within your organizations. You're committed to the future. I want to go back to the global stage, because each of you plays on the global stage. The emerging and growing markets of the world are still struggling massively with land use, with resource use, with air pollution, carbon emissions, closing the digital divide. Each of you has a piece in that. So how do we look to what you're doing in the markets where you're strongest and biggest? And how do we sort of leapfrog accelerated progress in the markets where you're growing and beginning to lead further?
Well, for us, our business starts with the forest, and it starts with the whole cycle of our business model. So bringing forest certification and properly managed forests to parts of the world that hadn't been doing it in conjunction with our customers is one of the most important things we are doing and have done and will continue to do that really brings a sustainability approach to our business model.
And I would just add, this is about choices for government, public-private partnerships. Again, in the same realm, we just talked about ecosystems with the companies, the governments in these emerging countries, and the private sector need to partner, because that's where you're going to see a maturity around these issues like environmental sustainability, climate. Other than that, and some of these countries are emerged; they're not just emerging, yeah. And we still don't have those choices being made because they're not up on the maturity scale.
And in the interest of time, you just lead by example. Mm-hmm. Just lead by example, and people will follow. And you can show that to everyone around the world.
That's terrific. Well, it's been great chatting with all of you. Everybody watching, go to the Business Roundtable website and see these CEO challenges. The whole list isn't complete yet, so you got other CEOs to keep challenging.
That's right.
So thank you for your leadership and your vision.
Thank you.
Thank you.